Oke, selamat sore Extremers atau selamat malam. Setelah seminggu tidak stream ya. Tadi mau memulai stream aja sudah settingan sudah berantakan ya. Oke, selamat malam Extremers semua. Em, Apa kabar kalian? Bagaimana hari kalian? Semoga hari kalian cukup menyenangkan ya, teman-teman. Dan kita opening dulu ya. Kita belum opening dari tadi. Kita belum opening. So, welcome to the Underworld Experience. I am Xyber, your demon butler. So, welcome to the Underworld Experience, Extremers. Hari ini tanggal 31, ya, 31 Oktober. That means hari ini harusnya Halloween, ya. Tapi karena di Indonesia tidak merayakan Halloween, jadi teman-teman Extremers ngapain nih hari ini nih? Aku juga bingung ya, mau ngapain tuh juga bingung. Jujur aja, aku juga bingung gitu. Mau ngapainnya tuh bingung ya, karena banyak hal yang terjadi. So gimana ya, ya mau tidak mau tetap harus stream ya teman-teman ya. Mau tidak mau tetap harus stream, tetap harus menjaga komitmen untuk buat konten gitu kan. Jadi gimana ya, bisa dibilang sedikit curhat aja gitu ya, sedikit sedikit ngobrol-ngobrol gitu sambil menikmati malam hari di Halloween night gitu. Jadi kalau teman-teman tadi perhatikan, sempat ada keluar itu tadi ya. Ini aku hapus deh ya, supaya sudah nggak ada urusannya dengan hal itu lagi. Oke, mending aku hapus saja. Oke, jadi pernah nggak sih teman-teman di keseharian kita itu salah pilih teman gitu, salah pilih orang yang bisa dipercaya? Pernah nggak sih di keseharian teman-teman semua itu salah mempercayai orang lebih tepatnya? Well, kalau dibilang apa ya, dalam minggu ini nih bisa dibilang aku mengalami penyesalan yang cukup parah ya. Penyesalan yang cukup besar sampai bisa dikatakan bukan mental down ya. Daripada aku tidak bisa deliver dengan baik, daripada aku tidak bisa memberikan konten yang baik buat teman-teman, mending aku stop stream dulu, walaupun akhirnya schedule berantakan gitu ya. Aku tidak ada stream sama sekali. Tapi di satu sisi seharusnya aku tetap stream ya. Seharusnya aku tetap stream, tetap menghibur teman-teman semua. Ya walaupun kondisi mental tidak stabil ya, kondisi mental sangat tidak stabil. Yang aku takutkan nih cuman aku tidak bisa menahan emosi ketika aku live stream. Itu sih teman-teman. Jadi kalau teman-teman merasa minggu ini kok nggak stream ya, kok kecewa ya gitu ya, mohon maaf ya teman-teman ya gitu. So malam hari ini kita mulai dengan ngobrol aja ya, kita dengan ngobrol aja, sedikit curhat ya teman-teman. Jadi sebenarnya kalau teman-teman datang ke live streamku yang sebelum-sebelumnya gitu kan, aku punya project ya, aku punya project di Desember itu, turnamen offline-nya Yu-Gi-Oh gitu ya, dengan harapan dari situ aku bisa mengumpulkan komunitas-komunitas dari luar kotaku, untuk dari luar kota Surabaya, untuk ikut sama-sama. Aku bentuk panitia, Aku membagi tugas ke setiap panitia untuk ya mengerjakan tugasnya masing-masing gitu. Nah, salah satu orang yang ada di dalam kepanitiaan itu sebenarnya eh, teman-teman yang lain gitu sudah ngomong, yakin dah dengan orang ini, yakin kah dengan orang ini. Bahkan adikku sendiri pun sudah ngomong, yakin dah dengan orang ini. Cuman aku bersikeras gini, karena dia punya channel untuk bisa mendatangkan sponsor-sponsor yang besar, dan dia punya pengalaman untuk itu, dan pernah mendatangkan sponsor besar. Akhirnya ya sudahlah, nggak apa-apa. Aku tanya, sanggup? Ya udah, aku masukkan dia karena orang ini punya kemampuan di bidang channelnya juga banyak untuk sponsor-sponsor besar, dan channelnya ini juga bukan channelnya juga ya, dan dia juga punya kemampuan untuk desain gitu, untuk desain grafis. Nah, aku masukkan dia ke dua divisi dengan dua tim yang berbeda. Tim yang pertama itu pasti tim marketing ya, untuk cari sponsor dan untuk cari peserta. Yang kedua tim desain ya. Tim desain itu untuk membuat pamfletnya, untuk membuat ini itunya, bahkan fanpage-nya dan lain sebagainya. Oke. Project ini dikerjakan sejak Juni, teman-teman. Sejak Juni. Aku dan panitia itu sudah kerja sejak Juni. Ya. Aku sama panitia sudah kerja sejak Juni, sudah mempersiapkan semuanya. Dan gimana ya, panitia acara bahkan sering, aku dari awal tuh sudah ngomong sama semua panitia, dan kebetulan aku di sini ketua panitianya. Aku sudah ngomong sama panitia, semua panitia, kalau kalian kesusahan silakan hubungi aku. Kalian kesusahannya di bagian mana, ayo aku bantu gitu loh. Kita sama-sama mikir, panitia nggak mungkin kerja sendirian gitu loh. Ya sudahlah. Oke. Panitia acara paling aktif, teman-teman. Panitia acara itu paling aktif, sudah membuat draft acara, sudah membuat ini itu, bahkan sudah meeting sama pengisi acara. Jujur aku malu sama pengisi acara karena harga sudah deal, apa yang dilakukan di acara itu juga sudah jelas, sudah meeting sama panitia acara juga. Jujur aku malu sama pengisi acaranya. Cuman ya sudahlah. TLDR singkatnya adalah panitia acara sudah bekerja keras untuk menyiapkan acara. Cuman sampai kemarin dibatalkan itu tanggal berapa ya? Sekitar tanggal 24-an. Ya, 24. Ya minggu lalu lah. Minggu lalu ya. Sampai minggu lalu itu bahkan sponsorship pun belum jelas. Jangankan sponsor, teman-teman, peserta yang dibutuhkan aja itu nggak ada yang mau daftar gitu loh. Nah, tim marketing kerjanya apa? Tim marketing kerjanya ngapain aja sampai tanggal 24 Oktober, padahal event itu tanggal 10 Desember. Dia ajak meeting susah dengan alasan ini itu. Gini teman-teman ya, aku ngerekrut panitia itu, membentuk tim panitia. Aku tahu bahwa semua panitia itu punya pekerjaan di luar sana selain ngurusin event ini. Aku pun ada kerjaan sendiri. Aku tahu mereka sibuk, dan semuanya punya kesibukan masing-masing. Aku ngajak mereka meeting, tujuannya adalah kalian punya kesusahan apa, progresnya sampai mana. Itu pun gak seminggu sekali loh teman-teman, kadang-kadang 2 minggu sekali, baru kadang-kadang sebulan sekali baru aku ngajak meeting. Dengan alasan kerja. Dengan semua alasan itu, Dia bilang nggak bisa meeting karena kecapean, nggak bisa meeting karena ini, nggak bisa meeting karena itu. Well, aku jujur tidak bisa terima alasan itu gitu loh. Karena semua di sini capek, semua di kepanitiaan itu lelah ya teman-teman ya. Ini mungkin aku bakal diomelin sama adikku. Kenapa sih kok curhat di live streaming atau di media sosial? Biar apa ya? Biar teman-teman yang di luar sana yang lagi nonton atau nanti nonton nonton VOD-nya gitu ya, video on demand-nya itu tidak mengulangi kesalahan yang sama. Padahal jujur nih, orang yang aku tunjuk sebagai panitia, yang si orang A ini ya, anggap saja dia orang A, dia ini sudah di blacklist sama banyak orang. Aku masih ngasih kesempatan ya, karena aku masih melihat potensinya dia, aku masih melihat kemampuannya dia, aku masih melihat dia punya harusnya kalau dia kerja benar, kinerjanya bagus, harusnya gitu. Dan channel-channelnya dia juga bagus gitu loh. Jujur saja, aku juga sudah pernah mengalami kekecewaan dengan orang ini. Aku tidak mau menyalahkan dia 100% ya, tapi salah satu penyebab utama kenapa aku sempat kehilangan pekerjaan dari dapur itu salah satunya ada andil dia di dalamnya, si A ini. Sampai segitu pun aku masih kasih kepercayaan ke dia gitu loh. Sekali lagi aku tidak menyalahkan dia karena waktu itu tanggung jawab dapur adalah tanggung jawabku waktu itu. Jadi aku tidak bisa melimpahkan kesalahan ke siapapun, tetapi diakui atau tidak diakui, aku kehilangan pekerjaan di dapur juga karena ada andil dia di dalamnya gitu loh. Well anyway, kembali ke curhatan tadi. Sampai tanggal 24 belum ada kejelasan siapa yang mau ngesponsori, siapa yang begini, siapa yang begitu, tidak ada kejelasan. Jumlah peserta pun tidak ada kejelasan. Hanya 7 orang peserta. Mau event besar gimana kalau peserta cuma 7 orang gitu loh teman-teman. Ya sudah lah ya. Akhirnya dengan berat hati aku harus membatalkan. Dan jujur aku malu. Aku malu dengan 3 pengisi acara yang sudah aku kontak, yang sudah aku briefing juga, meeting sama panitia acara juga. Jujur aku malu teman-teman. Aku malu. Aku malu semua ini harus dibatalkan hanya karena ketidakberesan kerja dari salah satu panitia. Jujur aku malu. Malu banget. Gitu. Welcome yang baru datang, welcome yang berhalloween ria di malam hari ini gitu ya. Barusan dimulai dengan curhat sedikit ya. Dimulai dengan curhat sedikit, kenapa kok 1 minggu full aku tidak streaming sama sekali. Karena ya jujur nih, mentalku juga nggak bener gitu. Aku juga belum sembuh dari flu gitu ya. Jujur aku masih flu sampai sekarang teman-teman. Cuman anyway it is, aku harus kembali gitu ya. Aku harus tetap pada tagline di mana aku harus keep extreme and stay excellent. Ya udah, aku kembali ke streaming lagi hari ini karena adikku juga maksa, jangan gitu mas gitu ya. Sampean harus streaming. Oke, fine, aku streaming, tapi nggak ada tema. Nggak ada tema. Halloweenan, ya ngapain juga Halloweenan gitu kan. Anyway, kembali ke curhatan tadi. Jujur aku sebenarnya menyayangkan event akhir tahun ini batal. Sangat menyayangkan. Sangat menyayangkan. hanya karena satu orang yang tidak mau bekerja dengan efektif, efisien, dan tidak mau keluar keringat untuk mengerjakan bidangnya di dalam kepanitiaan, akhirnya semua harus dibatalkan. Jujur aku kecewa. Jujur aku juga malu sama teman-teman VTuber yang aku undang sebagai pengisi acara. Jujur aku malu. Tapi lebih mending aku malu sekarang, lebih mending aku merasa malu sekarang dan semuanya dibatalkan daripada hari H harus jalan dengan berantakan. Aku lebih malu lagi, teman-teman. Lebih malu sama venue, lebih malu sama peserta, lebih malu lagi kalau tidak bisa memberikan hadiah sesuai dengan janji kepada peserta. Lebih malu lagi gitu. Daripada aku dipermalukan di hari pelaksanaan, mending jauh-jauh hari aku malu deh sama pengisi acara. That's why aku membatalkan semuanya itu. Gitu. Ini curhatan aja ya teman-teman ya. Dan kebetulan aku juga lagi flu, jadi di satu sisi aku pingin stream, di satu sisi mental nggak stabil daripada ngasih konten yang nggak jelas juga kayak malam hari ini gitu ya. Di satu sisi juga apa ya? Di satu sisi juga badanku juga tidak sehat gitu. Jadi ya mau gimana gitu ya teman-teman ya, mau gimana gitu. Nah, teman-teman yang lagi nonton nih, monggo nimbrung di live chat, silahkan, gratis kok ya, nimbrung di live chat. Aku minum dulu ya teman-teman ya. So, ya aku juga bingung ya. Malam hari ini mau nge-stream apa gitu aku juga bingung ya. Mau membahas apa aku juga bingung ya. Mau ngomongin apa juga bingung gitu. Mungkin teman-teman di sini ada ide? Mungkin teman-teman di sini yang lagi nonton punya ide tertentu gitu. Silahkan langsung aja ngomong di live chat, nggak apa-apa teman-teman. Dan jujur memang aku lagi nggak ada ide untuk streaming gitu ya. So, well, yang pokoknya streaming aja gitu. Oke. Kalau memang tidak ada yang komen, kalau memang tidak ada yang komen teman-teman, kita nonton horor aja gitu ya. Kita nonton animated horror lebih tepatnya. Kita nonton animated horror. Kita pindah deh dari sini deh. Ke player deh. Oke. So jangan di game capture, di window capture. Nah, di window capture aja. Waduh, muka aku ketutupan. Sebentar ya, masuk ke di bawah karakter. Nah, aku potong-potong dikit ya teman-teman. Nggak usah sih ya harusnya nanti, karena nanti ini bakalan anu juga kok, apa, full screen juga. Jadi harusnya ya nggak terlalu anu ya. Suaraku wave soundnya hilang sebentar. Wave soundku hilang. Wave sound di atas sini. Nah, ini wave soundnya baru kelihatan. Oke, agak geser dikit. Oke. So, hari ini kita akan nonton sama-sama. Karena nggak ada yang di live chat ya. Karena nggak ada yang nimbrung di live chat. Nggak apa-apa. Yang pasti kita akan nonton sama-sama dari Dr. No Sleep ya. Aku pause dulu aja ininya. Oke, so dari Dr. No Sleep, oke. 20 horror story, 20 horror stories animated best of Dr. No Sleep Compilation 2022. Nah, ini coba aku share deh. Ya, aku copy. Oke. Nah, masukin ke sini deh. Masukin ke ini, edit. Compilation of horror story. Nah, oke. Jadi di deskripsi di bawah teman-teman kalau mau nonton sendiri bisa ya. Gitu. Nah, kita akan nonton bareng-bareng ya teman-teman ya. Kita akan nonton bareng-bareng. Oke. Kita akan nonton bareng-bareng dari Dr. No Sleep. 20 horror stories animate. Mungkin nggak sampai 4 jam ya. Nggak mungkin sampai 4-5 jam begini. Kita akan pelan-pelan menikmati horror story-nya aja. Oke. Full screen aja. Kalau full screen ketutupan nggak? Bentar nih. Kalau full screen ketutupan nggak? Full screen ketutupan nggak? Oh, ketutupan. Mending turun dikit deh. Aku turun dikit deh. Nah, sound wave-nya turun juga. Salah klik. Salah klik. Nah, sound wave-nya turun juga. Oke, harusnya kalau di sini nggak terlalu ya, bisa ditonton bareng-bareng ya. Oke, mari kita nonton Dr. No Sleep 20 horror stories animated best of Dr. No Sleep compilation 2022. Mari kita nonton sama-sama karena kita lagi berhoror-horor dia di Halloween night. Happy Halloween, Extremers.
I left my house just as the purge announcement commenced. I started my van up just as the female announcer said,
"Police, fire, and emergency medical services will be unavailable until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when the purge concludes."
I took a moment to laugh about that. Not all emergency medical services would be unavailable. Taking my Sig Sauer pistol out of my hip holster, I stuck it between my legs for easy access. Safety on, so there was no risk of shooting myself in the junk. As I pulled out of my driveway, I spotted one of my neighbors at his mailbox. I came to a stop next to him, rolling down the window and talking to him through the bars affixed to the outside of my door. "Jacob, you better get your ass back inside. You know what time it is?" Jacob, a grumpy old man who must have been pushing 90, sneered at me. "Any asshole want to shoot me while I'm getting my mail? I welcome them." As he said this, he lifted his right hand out of the nasty brown robe he was always wearing, showing me a hand cannon of a revolver. Laughing, I put my hands up in surrender. "Besides," Jacob said, "you're the crazy son of a bitch who's going out into the city tonight of all nights. You think you and your second-rate ambulance really make a difference out there?" "I don't think we do," I said. "I know we do." "Well, I hope you don't get your head blown off tonight. Good luck to you, Jamal." "I'll be all right. It's an unspoken rule that you don't shoot the medics." "Yeah, it is until it ain't," Jacob said, turning away and waving his mail at me dismissively. "Stay inside, old man," I called after him, pulling away. He flipped me the bird, which got me laughing again. It took me a little over 10 minutes to get to Dylan's house, so it was about 7:15 by the time he got into the passenger seat of the van-turned-amateur ambulance. Sunset was around 6:45, so by the time I got to his place, it was full dark. "Ready to do this?" I said. Dylan looked at me sideways. "Hell yeah," he said. Dylan had black hair cut close to the scalp and a big, bushy black beard. He had icy blue eyes and a big scar over his right eye. Plus, he was 6'4" and about 225 pounds. The dude was intimidating as hell, so me asking him if he was ready was a kind of joke. I'm no slouch, but I'm not nearly as intimidating as Dylan. If Dylan ever called and said he didn't want to go out on purge night, I'd probably stay home too. We were a team. We watched each other's backs. I pulled out of his neighborhood and headed toward downtown Phoenix, where the action usually started earlier in the night. As the night went on, the action would move out of the downtown area once everyone got tired of trying to break into the stores down there. By the time 3 a.m. rolled around, we'd be out in the suburbs more, although we'd stick close to the central city and Encanto village areas. "You see anything going down as you drove to get me?" Dylan asked. "Not really," I said. "Some people..."
Oke. Aku pause dulu. Eh, aku pindahkan dulu bentar ya. Ada settingan yang harus dibetulkan dulu sebentar teman-teman ya. Bentar aja. Oke. Dengan begini kan sound wave-nya tidak menutupi ini. Tidak menutupi kalau ada suara dari aku aja baru ada sound wave-nya gitu loh teman-teman. So, I'm go with this. Nah, dengan begini kan teman-teman bisa mendengarkan suara animasinya tanpa harus mendengarkan sound wave-ku. Tanpa harus lihat sound wave-ku gitu kan ya. Lebih enak harusnya ya. Oke. I think we just continue to watch. Here we go. Halo Miho, selamat malam. Bagaimana Halloween night-mu? Masukkah suara? Harusnya masuk ya? Tes 1 2 3. Oh, masuk. Welcome Miho. Welcome to the Underworld Experience. Kebetulan lagi Halloween night, jadi kita berhalloween bersama gitu ya. Sambil nonton horror animated story dari Dr. No Sleep gitu. Nggak ada beda seperti hari biasa. Waduh. Gimana ya? Harus beda dong. Semangatnya harus terus membara gitu ya. Well, kita lanjut nonton ya. Jadi kita lanjut nonton. Lanjut nonton. Jadi ini story-nya eh dua orang tenaga medis gitu ya di satu kota. Itu ada purge. Purge itu kayak apa ya? Kayak tembak-tembakan gitu. Kayak tembak-tembakan di let's say hmm, apa ya? Kayak geng lawan geng gitu loh teman-teman. Nah, dua tenaga medis ini dengan memberanikan diri mereka ke downtown atau tempat-tempatnya gitu. Gitu. Harusnya begitu. Harusnya begitu. Mari kita lanjut nonton. Oke, oke. Jadi ini ada korban tembak-tembakan perempuan berusaha diselamatkan sama mereka berdua ceritanya. Halo, halo Faith. Halo, welcome. Welcome to the Halloween night. Kita lagi nonton ini 20 horror stories animated best of Dr. No Sleep Compilation 2022. Gimana kabar hari ini? Bagaimana Halloween nightmu, Faith? Apakah menyenangkan? Ada acara apa Halloween hari ini? Kita lanjut nonton ya. Kalau komen pasti aku baca kok, tenang teman-teman ya. Oke, jadi korbannya yang wanita tadi yang dimasukkan ke dalam van berusaha diselamatkan itu sudah tidak bisa diselamatkan, teman-teman. Apakah nyanyi itu harus pakai echo? Enggak harus ya, enggak harus. Cuman biar kedengaran lebih bagus aja sebenarnya, Miho. Gitu. Tapi sebenarnya kalau tanpa oh, nggak kedengeran kah? Desktop audionya nyala kok. Desktop audionya nyala. Nggak kedengeran kah? Beneran? Beneran nggak kedengeran? Serius? Ada audio kok. Ada audio. Seriously nggak kedengeran dari tadi? Sebentar. Ini desktop. Oh, pantas. Sorry. Berarti dari tadi tuh nggak ada yang kedengaran ya? Nggak ada suara kedengaran. Astaga, ya ampun Tuhan. Kesalahan teknis. Oke, ini mau ditonton dari awal kah? Ini mau ditonton dari awal atau gimana? Iya, tadi salah unmute. Salah klik, maaf teman-teman, maaf. Oke, mau ditonton dari awal atau gimana enaknya? Mending enak ditonton dari awal deh ya, karena dari awal tadi nggak ada voice-nya. Mending kita tonton dari awal deh. Lanjut aja nggak apa-apa. Oke. Karena ini juga harusnya sudah mau selesai sih di cerita yang pertama. Well, kita lanjut.
Guess you just called, he
Nah,
asked.
sudah ada harusnya.
That asshole from the barricade. I said, where is he? Dylan told me, and I headed back up 40th, turning left back onto Washington and then getting on the freeway again. We drove out of Phoenix and into Tempe, pulling into the Arizona Mills parking lot near the movie theater. We immediately saw the signs of a massive fight. One SUV was flipped over on its hood. Smoke was coming out of the engine compartment. Another had smashed head-on into a light pole. Off in the distance, we saw a Jeep and an SUV tear around the far side of the mall. The SUV was chasing the Jeep. A masked man was hanging out one of the windows, firing his semi-auto rifle at the swerving Jeep. They bounced over a curb, rolling across the sidewalk and onto the road bordering the mall, heading away from us. Where do we start? I asked Dylan. The guy said his buddy's at the entrance to the movie theater. I nodded and directed the van that way. We spotted him pretty quick. He was lying against a light pole near an SUV riddled with bullet holes. Parking the van near the guy, I took a moment to look around. I saw no movement. No one else was around. Dylan and I jumped out of the van and approached the guy. His skull mask was askew. but I could tell by his clothes that it wasn't one of the two guys we'd talked to at the barricade. Not that it really mattered. The guy was still alive, but he'd been shot once in the leg and once in the lower right abdomen. He croaked the word help with half-slitted eyes, one hand weakly pressing on each wound. "Where's the rest of your crew?" I asked. "Where's the guy that called us?" The man shook his head and asked us to help him again. "What do you think?" I said to Dylan. My partner looked around, scanning the parking lot. "Let's get him in the van," he said. We brought out the gurney, got the guy on it, and loaded him into the back of the van. I got in the driver's seat and kept my eyes peeled for trouble while Dylan worked in the back.
Yeah.
Gunshots caught my attention, and I looked out the windshield to spot where they'd come from. A sedan rolled by on the street bordering the mall, a couple of kids whooping and hollering as they shot their pistols into the air. I shook my head.
Ya, sudah dikecilkan.
A sudden banging sound came from the back of the
Harusnya
van,
sudah dikecilkan.
causing me to jump in my seat. At first, I thought it was Dylan doing something, but when I turned around to look, his wide eyes were staring back at me. I said, "Let me in!" A man's voice called from outside the van. "I want to see my brother." "Where the hell did he come from?" Dylan asked. I shrugged sheepishly. My attention had been fixed on the sedan, and I'd let this guy come up on us from the back. "I'll take care of it," I said, opening the door, pistol in hand. "We're helping him just like we said," I called out before I could even see the guy. "I'm coming back there. If you want to see him, I'll let you in." I stepped around the back of the van to see a man in a skull mask, pointing a rifle at me. It was the same guy that had given me at the barricade. "You shoot me, my partner will let your brother die," I said. "Let me see him. Is he gonna be okay?" "If you put your gun down, I'll open the back door for you so you can see him." After a moment of thinking, the man brought his gun down and nodded to me. "Okay," I said, stepping around to the back doors. I banged on the door and told Dylan it was okay to open up. The back door swung out. The masked man opened the right door, and I opened the left all the way so we could see inside. The man's eyes went wide at what he saw, and he went.
Happy Halloween, Ellie. Waduh, ada Elisa. Welcome. Welcome to the Underworld Experience, Ellie, dengan ini 20 horror stories animated best of Dr. No Sleep Compilation 2022. Happy Halloween, Ellie. Bentar lagi Ellie stream ya kalau nggak salah. Harusnya Ellie stream kan? Bentar lagi. Jam 8 ya? Jam 8 kan? Kita lagi nonton bareng nih. Persuasion success. Maksudnya persuasion success gimana, Pak Kos? Welcome Pak Kos. Welcome Shotspark to the Underworld Experience. Welcome Jovo. Happy Halloween, Jovo. How's your Halloween night? Is it already night over your place? I don't know. So we're gonna continue the story, but I'm gonna give the recap ya. Aku akan kasih recapnya di akhir cerita ya. Di cerita pertama ini. So we're gonna continue the story.
Went to raise his gun up, but I was ready. I put my SIG to his head and pulled the trigger, aiming it so his brains wouldn't get all over the van. He crumpled to the ground, the gaping hole in the side of his head leaking what little brains he had onto the asphalt. "That was close," Dylan said. "Nah, I know what I'm doing. Now if we hurry, we can harvest from this guy too." I gestured at the dead man on the ground. Inside the van, Dylan had the dead man's brother opened up and had been working on removing his liver. Dylan looked at the man he had opened up and then down at the guy I'd just shot. "Okay," he said, "but we need to load him up and take him elsewhere to harvest. I don't want to have someone sneak up on me again. I damn near ruined the liver when he banged on the door like that." "Agreed," I said. "So counting that guy's organs, provided they're all usable, how many more do we need tonight?" Dylan thought for a second. I knew he was going over the space we had available in the van. We had plenty of space in the static cold storage lockers. Livers and kidneys could be kept for a long time in those. But for hearts and lungs, which spoiled faster even in cold storage, we had invested in a couple of perfusion systems. These systems stimulated the action of the human body by pumping nutrient-rich fluid and oxygen into the organ, keeping it viable until we handed them all off to our buyer at 6:30 a.m., half an hour before the end of the purge. "We should be good with one more," Dylan said. "I'll know more once I get that guy opened up." but we gotta work fast. Those organs are dying as we speak. I smiled as Dylan and I crouched to get the dead man off of the asphalt and into the van. It was going to be a productive purge. Then I had a thought that I'd had every year since Dylan and I had started our entrepreneurial enterprise. Too bad the purge is only once a year.
Oke, so that's the first story. Jadi itu tadi cerita pertama, teman-teman. So that's the first story for tonight ya. So that's two couples of this one, this one and the big one you already saw. Jadi dua orang yang tadi itu yang pakai baju biru itu yang quote and quote menyamar ya, menyamar jadi apa namanya, paramedik ya. So those two peoples that act like a paramedic in the purge. Purge is like a gun blazing things in the once in a year because he said like that. He act like a paramedic, but they both of them harvesting the human organ. Jual beli organ, iya benar, jual beli organ. Endingnya itu ternyata mereka berdua ini bukan paramedik ya, tapi harvesting, panen organ, human organ. Luar biasa. That's the first story ya. Masih cerita pertama, teman-teman. Oke, the story number 2. Nowhere safe. Tidak ada tempat yang aman. Let's continue to watch.
Booming footsteps shook the ground like miniature earthquakes, growing more powerful as they approached. People were screaming and running all around me. The park was in chaos, but I couldn't help everyone. And the people I was trying to help weren't listening. "Get out of the tunnel!" I shouted for the 5th time. A couple of people nearby looked at me, the terror on their faces momentarily fading as they recognized my uniform. They seemed to realize that I knew what I was talking about.
Good
and they
idea
moved
to
out
get
of the tunnel
money.
quickly,
So akal.
taking their chances in the flow of running bodies down the avenue behind me. "Move! Get out of the tunnel! You have to get out!" I shouted again. 4 more people heeded my advice, running out from the shade and into the bright sunlight. But there were still a good 100 people inside the concrete tunnel, underneath a road that only employee vehicles used. I stepped back from the tunnel entrance and looked up to see the massive dreadnought lumbering forward on its 4 legs.
Okay. So the second horror story, it's gonna be told about the Jurassic World or Jurassic Park that I think it's gonna be Jurassic World ya. Aku pikir ini adalah horror dari Jurassic World ya. Karena dari seginya tadi itu Jurassic Park itu belum launching ya, teman-teman. The Jurassic Park is not launching to the what is called tourism or something like that. Belum welcome tourist dan sebagainya. Kalau ini sudah ada pengunjung, if this one is already have their own visitors, that means it's gonna be Jurassic World. Jadi lebih ke Jurassic World-nya karena sudah ada visitor. Kenapa aku berani ngomong gitu? Ini ada Brontosaurus di sini. This is the big Brontosaurus. This is sauropod. Okay, continue.
Its head twisting around at the end of its long neck to look behind it. A pack of Maposaurus dinosaurs were chasing the large sauropod, clearly intent on taking the much larger creature down for lunch. The tunnel would never hold the massive dinosaur's weight, and it was getting closer. I had no idea how the security protocols and fail-safes had all failed, but there wasn't anything I could do about it anyway. I was a tour guide, and things like security protocols were above my pay grade. But as a park employee and a human being, I had an obligation to try to save as many of these people as I could. But they couldn't hear me, or they wouldn't. I screamed at the people hiding in the tunnel one more time, and was happy to see that a group of about 10 heeded my call and ran out. I backed away, nearly getting knocked down by a man running past behind me. Then I stood there and watched as the skyscraper-tall, 60-ton Dreadnoughtus brought its elephant-like front legs down just above the tunnel, which collapsed under the weight of the massive creature, instantly killing those who had not escaped. The pack of 5 Maposaurus carnivores caught up to the huge herbivore as it tried to get its front legs out of the wreckage of the tunnel. The Maposauruses were similar to Tyrannosaurus rex dinosaurs, but significantly bigger, and some would say smarter, since they hunted in packs.
Jadi, so this is Maposaurus, Maposaur. It's like a Tyrannosaur. Jadi ini Maposaurus seperti Tyrannosaurus, tapi kata orang lebih cerdas dan mereka hunting in packs. Jadi mereka berburunya dalam kelompok. Bayangkan kalau ada Tyrannosaurus gitu ya, berburunya dalam kelompok gitu gimana ya? Sendiri aja sudah ngeri gitu. Apalagi ini barengan ya dalam kelompok. So, we continue.
4 of them began attacking the huge sauropod, taking car-sized chunks out of its neck and back with their powerful jaws. The 5th turned its attention off the raised and fenced-in roadway, looking down at the terrified people running around. I stared up at it as the dinosaur's eyes swept over me, its cold intelligence startling me out of my shock. I turned to run in the general direction of the underground bunkers that had been built, just in case any of the dinosaurs got loose in the park. These bunkers were a good mile away from where I was, on the other side of the large park. I heard a crunching sound and looked over my shoulder to see that the 5th Maposaurus had stepped down off the raised roadway, crushing a cotton candy cart with one foot. Andy!
I have seen some videos of those. They are pretty interesting and horrifying. Yes, indeed. That's why I already watched some, but not this one yet. Actually, the one that I heard was the one that have rules. The one creepypasta rules, if I'm not wrong. That one, if we try to imagine what happened inside, it's really creepy and it's really terrifying. If we try to listen carefully and imagine inside our head, it's really creepy and horrifying. But that's cool because sometimes things like that need to be animated like this. That's why this time we watched the animated one. Let's continue.
A voice called out. I whipped my head around and saw one of my co-workers, Robert, sitting on a wooden bench and holding his bloody left ankle. Bob? I said, helping him up from the bench. What happened? What do you think? He said, leaning on me so I could help him walk. I got attacked by a Utah raptor. I had to resist the urge to stop right there in the middle of the walkway. Good God, those are loose too? Everything's loose, he said, or will be soon. I looked behind me and saw the Maposaurus chasing a woman down the path toward us. We need to move! Bob and I picked up the pace, but his injured ankle was slowing us down. Up ahead was the door to a burger restaurant. I figured we could make it in there and wait until the Maposaurus went past. The woman behind us screamed as she ran, and the dinosaur's feet made the ground shake as it ran after her. In here, I said, ducking away from Bob to open the door to the restaurant. The dinosaur was close, but I didn't dare look. I pulled the door open and stood aside to let Bob in, but it was too late. The Maposaurus lunged toward us. Bob tried to jump through the door, but the massive teeth caught hold of his arm. I reached out and grabbed Bob's other arm and found myself in a tug-of-war with a huge carnivorous dinosaur. My feet came off the ground as I held onto Bob's arm. He was screaming, looking down at me. Then the Maposaurus let go, and we both fell to the ground. The impact knocked my breath out, but I scrambled up, knowing it wasn't done with us. That was when I saw that the dinosaur hadn't dropped us. It had bitten through Bob's arm. His stump poured blood onto the concrete walkway. I sensed movement behind me and dove out of the way as the creature's huge jaws came down, crunching into Bob's body as it lifted him back into the air to finish the job. Screw seeking shelter in the burger joint, I needed to get to the bunkers. They were the only true safe place in the park now, so I ran as fast as I could get away as the Maposaurus chomped on my coworker. There were still people running in every direction, many of them looking for their loved ones. Still, others were just trying to find the way out of the maze-like park. Even when there weren't bloodthirsty dinosaurs killing people, park guests had to consult a map to find the nearest bathroom, much less the main entrance and exit. Once the Maposaurus was out of sight behind me, I started gathering people to me, telling the ones that would listen that I was headed to the bunkers. By the time I'd gone a little over a quarter of a mile, I'd gathered 7 people with me, 4 adults and 3 children. The main thoroughfare we were on was lined on either side with amusement park rides between gift shops, restaurants, arcades, and vendors of all types. All the rides were dinosaur-themed, and some of them were even designed to go through certain of the more safe dinosaur habitats. But for the most part, these rides and shops were where people came after visiting the other side of the park, where the main dinosaur attractions were. So as we moved through the chaos, I prayed that the dinosaurs I'd seen so far were a fluke, and that if the rest of them were loose, they would stay on the other side of the huge park. But soon enough, the rumbling vibrations I felt through my feet told me we weren't so lucky. I turned around and looked behind our group just in time to see a 6-ton Triceratops galloping down the roadway toward us. I couldn't see what it was running from, but it didn't really matter. The beast was moving fast. Even as I watched, it trampled a young man who tripped, trying to get out of its way. "Move! Go in there!" I yelled, pointing into a nearby gift shop. My group shuffled into the shop as the Triceratops stomped past. "It was running from something," I said to my group as I made my way through them, deeper into the store. "Let's wait in here for a minute to see what—" "Don't come any closer," a man I'd never seen before said. He was standing behind a nearby teller counter, rummaging through the cash register with one hand. He had a knife in his other hand, pointing the tip of the blade at me. I put my hands up to show I wasn't a threat. "We need to stay in here for a minute," I said. "We won't interfere with you. I'm a park employee, sure, but some petty thievery is the least of my concerns." "Petty?" the man said, clearly scared and angry. "You think I'm petty?" "No, that's not what—" "You!" he shouted. "You charge $200 just to get into this place, then you overcharge for everything. I'm taking some of my money back from you rich bastards." "Fine," I said. "That's fine. Just take it and go." I looked over to my left at the other side of the store. I thought I'd seen some movement from there. Another pair of open doors was over there, leading out onto a walkway parallel to the one we'd come in from. Maybe someone had ducked into the store from over there. If so, I couldn't see them now. The man momentarily returned his attention to the cash register, digging out for more money. I took the opportunity to signal my little group out of the store. I figured whatever had the Triceratops spooked would have already gone past by now, and this guy seemed a little unhinged. I saw him as the bigger immediate threat. They started moving back through the door, but this caught the man's attention. He snapped his head back and looked with wide, unfocused eyes at the group. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "We're leaving," I said. "You can stay here and do your thing, but we're leaving." "You're going to get security, aren't you?" he said, coming around the counter toward me. I backed away from the knife right into a rack of t-shirts. He pressed the tip of the knife into the little divot at the base of my neck. "I think security's a little busy right now," I said. This seemed only to make him angrier, and I felt the tip of the knife pierce my skin. Then one of the children in our group, a little girl, screamed. Movement flashed on my left, and both the robber and I turned to look just as the Utah raptor pounced. The lightly feathered raptor slammed into the robber with its claws on his chest and its open jaw on his head. I stumbled back, knocking the shirt rack down in my shock, just as the Utah raptor used its powerful jaws to collapse the man's skull, the sound like a cracking walnut shell. My group ran out of the store, and I followed, sure that where there was one Utah raptor, there would be more. The one in the store looked to be a juvenile, only standing about 6 feet tall and probably weighing just under 1,000 pounds. I reached up and felt my neck as we ran, but only found a little bit of blood. The knife hadn't cut me very badly. We ran hard toward the bunker entrance, picking up more people on the way. When we finally reached the entrance, there were 24 of us. It was located amid the faculty buildings, and I figured many staff members were already inside. I swiped my employee keycard and entered the code. The metal door unlocked and swung open. I looked down the concrete steps and found them empty. Thinking it safe, I held the door open, ushering everyone else inside to make sure there were no stragglers. When everyone was inside, I looked around and decided that I would recoup inside and then head back out to find more people. As soon as I stepped around the open door, screaming erupted from inside. I looked down the concrete steps, seeing 3 Utah raptors tearing through many of the people I'd just saved. They used their teeth and claws to incapacitate them.
Blood sprayed everywhere as I stood there, shocked. How had they gotten in? How long had they been down there? Was nowhere safe? A fourth Utah raptor appeared and lunged over its companions toward the 5 uninjured people who were scrambling up the stairs. The raptor was moving fast. The people would never make it. But if I left the door open, I would surely be killed, and the raptors would continue their killing spree. The people rushing up the stairs screamed at me as I swung the door shut. Their eyes didn't show anger, only shock and dismay at the betrayal. I shut the door just as the raptor was leaping toward them, claws and teeth ready to grind flesh. I put in my code and listened as the door locked. The screams inside were muffled, but that didn't make them any easier to hear. Feeling sick to my stomach, I turned away from the door and came face to face with the Utah raptor. It seemed to smile at me, showing its razor-sharp teeth just before its jaws opened to crush my head.
Okay, so that's the third story for today. Jadi cerita ketiga ya. So that's the third story, the horror of the Jurassic World, dinosaur related ya. Jadi itu tadi cerita ketiga yang berhubungan dengan Jurassic World. Kalau teman-teman di sini sudah pernah nonton filmnya dan berhubungan dengan dinosaurus ya. Jadi itu tadi ceritanya tentang penjaga taman yang berusaha untuk menyelamatkan diri dan pengunjung yang ada karena Jurassic World-nya breakout ya, breakout. So, tapi keputusannya agak nyeremin ya, agak aneh. But the decision is kinda, for me is kinda ruthless ya. Because when they already inside the bunker and the bunker is not safe, apa ya? Jadi ketika bunkernya dia sudah tahu tuh bunkernya sudah ada Utah Raptor di dalamnya gitu. Terus dengan sengajanya dikunci gitu ya. Dengan sengaja dikunci, ya sudah gitu. Cuman ngomong-ngomong tentang dinosaur horror, talking about dinosaur horror, you guys knows about the new game? I don't know it's already released or not. Teman-teman di sini tahukah ada game baru yang nggak tahu sudah dirilis atau belum di Steam juga? Itu ada namanya Death Ground. Nah, I'm really waiting for that games, Death Ground. It's kind of cool games like dinosaur survival also, tapi bisa multiplayer ya. Also can play it as a multiplayer games. It's just kind of cool, kind of creepy in other means of creepy, scary also. Tapi but I like it very much. That's why I still waiting for the release ya. Tameng manusia, benar-benar. Tameng manusia, nggak salah, nggak salah. Cuman kayak gimana ya? Kayak kalau kalau menurutku ya, harusnya 5 orang itu paling tidak bisa selamat 1 atau 2 lah gitu. Bisa selamat 1 atau 2. Kalau menurutku nih ya, menurutku pribadi ya, kalau aku menjadi Park yang si yang pakai baju coklat-coklat itu, harusnya bisa selamat 1 atau 2 ya, paling 1 dilompatin sama Utah Raptor gitu, sisanya ditutupin, dikunci, ya sudahlah. Kan ada Utah Raptor lagi dari depan. Nah, masih ada mid shield lagi gitu. I still have another mid shield to run away gitu. It's not me and my alone face to face with Utah Raptor gitu loh. Kalau menurutku ya. Jadi sacrifice-nya dia ke orang banyak itu terlalu cepat. Jadi paling tidak oke lah 1 jadi korban di tangga, yang 4 keluar dikunciin supaya Utah Raptor di dalam nggak keluar. Kan masih berlima nih. Nah, ada Utah Raptor dari depan kan. Nah, yang 4 ini jadi mid shield, yang bertiga lari gitu. Ada Park Ranger, ada Barbarian. Park Barbarian mana? Masalahnya saya juga tidak ada Park Warlock atau Park Sorcerer atau Park Wizard juga. Gitu problemnya Pak Kos. Gimana dong? Okay, we continue to the next story, The Island. apakah The Island ini adalah koktail? Ya, Island. Enggak. Bercanda. Let's continue.
I'm a search and rescue operator. Last month, I responded to a distress signal originating from an uninhabited island. I discovered a journal whose contents are disturbing. Last month, my team responded to a SOS in the Southern Pacific. When we arrived, we were unable to locate any of the stricken individuals, or indeed, any evidence of their whereabouts. All I found was 2 curious items in a local cave system, a journal and an audio recorder, both of which were owned by a man named Albert Vess, an archaeologist, and one of the individuals who deployed the SOS. The contents of the journal are disturbing, but perhaps worse still is the audio recording. Since reading the journal and listening to the audio, I've been feeling strange, unwell. My mind feels like mush, and my moods have been erratic. No medication has helped. My doctor thinks I just need some rest, but I'm not sure. It's just hard to describe. I don't know why, but I feel like the island has something to do with it. I feel like the journal does. I've transcribed it below in case anybody can help me better understand it, but be warned, it's an uncomfortable read. June 1st, 2021. The valley is steep. For an island in the middle of the Pacific, it feels almost unnatural, certainly uncommon. I've done plenty of these expeditions, and I've rarely encountered geography such as this. The shoreline is sparse, thin. It gives way to a scatter of trees and a sharp drop-off into a hollow of palms and brush. It's incredible, claustrophobic. It's where we're going, all 4 of us. Bernard, the research lead, Darian, the cave explorer, and Allison, one of the most accomplished archaeologists I've ever met. And of course, myself. My stomach is still upside down, recovering from the sail it took to get here, but the worst is over. Once we finish our survey of the ruin below, we can set up camp and get some shut-eye. It's not so bad, really, and we're so very close. This, I think, could be the discovery of a lifetime. The sun is setting in the sky. When we looked down into the valley this afternoon, we never anticipated it'd be this slow going, or that the canopy of leaves would be this blinding. Allison recommends we make camp and get some rest. She says the ruins will be there to excavate in the morning, and we'll be better off with more daylight to spare. Bernard disagrees. He says we've got lanterns and rations, and that the scene survey won't take that long. Besides, he's not planning on doing any excavating until he knows the ruins are actually there. His remark catches us off guard. I remind him that there are already aerial photos of the site, that there's no need to prove it's actually there because we can see that it is. It takes Bernard a minute to answer, and when he does, he admits the aerial photos of the ruins were doctored. He admits that the research he submitted to secure this grant was false. The liar. All I have, he says, is what's written in here. He shows us a leather-bound book with yellowed pages. It belonged to his ancestor, apparently, a merchant captain who was shipwrecked on this island over a century ago. According to the journal, there really are ruins, but the thing is, they're underground. You'd never know they were there if you weren't looking for them, and it's why nobody's discovered them before. I can hardly believe it. I want to be furious at him, but Allison is angry enough for the both of us. She's fuming. Darian doesn't seem to mind terribly, maybe because it's her first expedition, and she still has stars in her eyes. Trust me, Bernard says. This will be the discovery of our lives. I suppose we don't really have a choice. The boat that dropped us off won't be returning for another week. For better or worse, I and everybody else are stuck on this little spit of land. Allison heads into the trees to pee, and when she comes back, she's a nervous wreck. Her shoulders are quaking. Her voice is uneven. I heard footsteps out there, she says. Footsteps and laughter, out there in the jungle. I remind her that there's nobody out there, that this island is as empty as it's ever been. Then who's laughing at me? She snaps. The trees? The jungle ends in moonlight. It opens to a clearing, a dusty expanse of stone boulders and saplings. We made it to the bottom of the valley, to the site of the supposed underground ruins. Bernard tells us there should be an opening somewhere, a hole. It might be tiny, or it might be large enough to fall into if you aren't careful. The 4 of us split off, flashlights in tow. Allison in one direction, scowling, and Darian in another, beaming. She's young enough that I hope we really do find something. Otherwise, this might just sour her opinion on archaeology for good. Before I can step off, Bernard stops me. He asks me if I can hear that. Hear what? I ask. The laughter, he says. It's not 40 paces away that something catches my eye. It's small, difficult to make out in the dark, even with the light of my lantern and the moon above, but it's there. It's making my skin crawl. Between two squat boulders is a circle of small stones arranged in a spiral. They frame a recess into the earth that's filled with decaying wood, charred black by the heat of flames, a fire pit. I gaze at it, stunned. This island should be deserted. As my mind churns, I spot something sticking out of the dirt and the ash. It's broken, crumbling. It looks like Mother Nature has had its way with it, but it's unnatural enough to stick out to me. It isn't wood. It isn't stone. It's strange. I bend low, digging into the mess, hoping the debris above has managed to preserve what lay beneath. A moment later, and I know that it has. My hands pull something free, something that's decomposed into 3 pieces, something familiar. A fractured human skull. It's odd, but I stare at the skull for a long while. There's something about it that I can't quite put my finger on, but it's fascinating to me. I feel almost entranced by it. Before I can properly process my find, I hear screaming, shouting. I hear Bernard, Allison, and Darian all calling my name. They're shrieking for me into the night, telling me the good news. They found the ruin. When I reach them, they surround a hole in the earth the size of a basketball. Bernard's lantern is sitting next to it. He's explaining in an excited tone how he nearly fell into the damn thing. He's explaining how he knew it would be here, about how he never once had any doubt. I'm trying to tell them, about the fire pit. I'm trying to tell them about the human skull split into 3 pieces. What does it matter, Darian asks. If somebody died here, that was probably 100 years ago. She's already getting herself ready for her first big find. She's tying a length of rope to a nearby boulder to serve as an anchor point. Bernard's strapping a headlamp to her helmet. Why it matters, I say, is that human skulls don't generally burn themselves on deserted islands. Why it matters is that whoever burned that skull was doing it very much on purpose, and there are very few reasons that would ever be okay. Bernard sides with Darian, but tells me that I'm probably right, that whoever burned that skull was up to no good. He tells me we can't do anything about it since it's ancient history. Before I can argue my point, Allison calls us over. She's on her belly at the entrance of the hole, with her flashlight angled down trying to get a look inside the ruin. She tells us she thinks she saw something move down there. Darian reasons that it's probably just water bouncing the light around, making shadows. She says she sees it all the time while exploring underground caves. I figure she's probably right about that. In a valley like this, it'll be a small miracle if these ruins aren't already flooded. Still, the skull looms in the back of my mind. It unnerves me. Darian rigs the rope to her carabiner and slips her legs into the hole. A moment later, and she shimmies the rest of her body through the opening until the white of her helmet disappears beneath.
Oke, thank you Fate. Thank you sudah mampir. Thank you sudah mau nonton bareng. Happy Halloween Fate. Happy Halloween Fate. Kita lanjut ya guys. Jujur aku masih
As she lowers herself
belum nangkap ceritanya ini tentang apa ya. Jujur aja aku masih belum nangkap ceritanya tentang apa.
down into the ruins, Bernard asks her for details about what she's seeing. For the first while, she says it's just a long, tight drop. Nothing to see, just stone pressing against her on all sides. Then she says it's opening up into a cavern. She says she's inside of them now, the ruins, or rather, a cave system. I don't see any ruins, she tells us. All I see are... Her voice trails off. It sounds concerned. There's writing down here, she says. Lots of writing, all over the cave walls. It looks like it was scratched into the stone. Bernard looks ecstatic. He asks her what language it's in and whether or not she can read it. She responds by saying that yes, she can read it. It's English numerals, she says. There are numbers all over the cave. A pause. 2 breaths. Her voice
Iya, serem. Harus serem sih memang. Kan cerita horor, Miho.
goes out of the dark hole. Are these dates? Nobody gets a chance to ask her about the dates or exactly how many there are because our attention is stolen. In the distance, from deep within the jungle, we hear the low sound of footsteps, heavy, desperate footsteps, footsteps that are coming our way. I call into the hole, ordering Darian to get out. I tell her something. Somebody is coming. My heart is beating through my chest, my mind replaying images of the scorched skull. It feels insane, absurd. There's nobody on this island. We know that. We have the records, and yet, I feel that something is very wrong. Allison holds her only weapon, a brush-whacking machete, and she's shrieking at Bernard, demanding whether he forgot to mention the existence of cannibal tribes on the island. Bernard's too shell-shocked to speak. I holler at him to help me heave on the rope, to bring Darian up faster. Thankfully, he does. It's exhausting, but we manage to pull her up to the top of the hole, just far enough to see the white of her helmet and her terrified features. She tells us that she's stuck, that she can't move any further. I hear the footfalls nearing, so close. Whatever's coming is running now, and the sound is like thunder in my ears. I watch as Bernard works at freeing Darian from the opening, and I realize it's taking too long. Much too long. I drop the line and rush over to help, pressing my hands against Darian's shoulders. Then, all at once, the footfalls stop. They stop just outside the perimeter of the clearing. For a moment, the night is silent. None of us so much as steal a breath as we listen for whatever is out there, whatever is coming for us. Allison suggests that our shouting may have scared it off. It's a comforting thought, that it might have been a large species of boar charging through the jungle, or perhaps an earthquake. Bernard agrees. He adds that we're all running low on sleep and very on edge, and that Allison was right. We should have just made camp and gotten some rest. Then Darian screams, and her body slips, ribs snapping as she disappears back into the darkness of the ruin. A split second later, there's a grotesque cracking sound and the screaming stops. It's the sound of Darian's body striking the cavern floor. It is, I think, the sound of Darian dying. Something goes through us then. Allison, Bernard, myself. Something goes through us like a bullet, shutting us up as we wait, desperate to hear Darian call out and say she's okay, that she's just a little bruised up.
Nyangkutnya agak tidak masuk akal. Iya, agak tidak masuk akal memang. Kenapa kok bisa nyangkut? Padahal tadi masuknya normal-normal aja kan gitu ya.
I call out to her, desperate, horrified. Allison appears at my side and hushes me with a finger. She glares at me, narrowing her eyes at me like all of this entire disaster is somehow my fault. Then she lowers herself onto her hands and knees, machete by her side, ear toward the hole. She asks us if we can hear that. She tells us to listen. Bernard and I press ourselves closer to the opening. We strain our ears. There's a scraping sound coming from inside, a low, sustained sound, like something being slid across stone. There's something down there, Allison says. I knew there was something down there, and I told you, Bernard. I f***ing warned you. She erupts, lunging at Bernard like a maelstrom, scratching, punching, hurting him as much as she can. He curls up, but he doesn't try to fight back. He doesn't try to flee. He sits there trembling, I think, because he hears the same thing that Allison and I do down there in the cavern. He hears the sound of Darian's body being dragged away. We put it to a vote. Out of the three of us, only Bernard wants to go back down into the hole looking for Darian. Only Bernard wants to face the nightmare he dragged us into. Allison and I, we have no idea what we're dealing with. Bernard's convinced that it's an animal. A family of bears, perhaps, that are using the cavern as a sort of den. There's no other alternative, he says. What I don't say is that there's always an alternative. In this case, the alternative is we're not alone on this island. In this case, the alternative is that whatever's out there doesn't want to be found. The hike back up to our base camp is long, and by the time we arrive, it's raining and half past noon. A wall of dark gray descends toward us from across the ocean. Storm clouds, lightning flashes on the horizon, followed by rolling cracks of thunder. The sea laps and churns. All any of us want to do is go to sleep, to rest, and process our grief over losing Darian. But we have work to do. Bernard fires up the HF amplifier and attempts to contact rescue services. Static greets him over the receiver. He tells us he doesn't think it's working. He tells us the radio is Allison tries her hand at it, and thank God she does, because she gets the thing running again. Over the other end, like the voice of an angel, we hear the operator crackle out of the speaker.
Everything all right out there, folks?
No, we say in near-perfect unison. God, no. The conversation doesn't go as planned. According to the operator, it could be hours or even days before we're picked up. The storm front in our area is a bad one, they explain, and it's likely to impede any rescue efforts. Local authorities aren't keen on risking their lives for tourists. At the moment, they're attempting to contact military vessels nearby for a potential extraction, but we shouldn't count on that. Their advice? Hunker down, batten the hatches, stay safe, avoid becoming separated. What if there's somebody out there, Allison asks them, trying to f***ing kill us?
Didn't you say you had a machete?
They ask.
Feel free to use it.
The night passes for me as a string of nightmares. I toss and turn for much of it. It's not clear why, but my stomach is in knots. I feel ill, nauseous, and unwell. I wonder if it's the rations I ate. Maybe Bernard didn't prepare them properly. Maybe they'd gone bad. It doesn't matter. My body and mind are exhausted enough that the pain in my stomach is an afterthought. I awake to silhouettes arguing, Allison and Bernard. My head feels like I just drank a bottle of whiskey and hit it with a hammer. My mouth is dry. I'm sweating and shivering at the same time. Do I have a fever? Pieces of their argument reach my ears. They're not far from me, but they sound so distant, so faint. Give me a break, Allison. Darian's a grown woman who made her own choices. You think we knew she'd slip? She didn't slip. You know damn well. I stumble from the tent, and warm, tropical rain is pouring overhead. Wind whistles painfully in my ears. Allison and Bernard are standing beneath the awning nearby, looking at me, but their faces are a blur. I can't make out their expressions. What are you doing up? Allison asks. Eavesdropping? She's holding the machete, pointing it at me. Hands grab me by my arm, roughly. Go to sleep, Bernard orders. He guides me back into the tent, back into my sleeping bag. You're not well. Tomorrow the storm breaks and the rescue team should arrive. I mumble a response, but my words are slurred, barely there. It's okay, he says. Nothing about this is okay, I thought to myself. I spend the night in and out of sleep, my mind swimming. My body feels feverish, alternating between flashes of panting heat and frigid chills. My dreams are of Allison. In them, she's calling out to me, begging me for help. She's trapped inside a pit filled with snakes, covered head to toe in red and blue serpents. They're slithering about her, and I'm holding her machete and chopping at them, trying to save her. Please, she says, please. The next morning, my head is pounding. There's an awful pressure near my temples, like my brain is expanding outward and trying to split my skull in three. I need water. I need aspirin. Why is it so quiet? I open my eyes to an empty tent. Strangely, there's no sign of Allison or Bernard. It's just me and the remains of our HF radio. Red and blue wires lay strewn about the floor like electrical snakes. Its faceplate is split in two, the circuit board with it. What happened? Wandering outside, I find the storm has cleared. A sprinkle of rain is all that's left. Did the rescue team arrive already? Perhaps Allison and Bernard have taken them down to the ruins to search for Darian. I abandon the tent and take to the shoreline, calling out their names. It's a short while later that Bernard finds me, emerging from the jungle looking disheveled, manic. His eyes are wild, framed with heavy bags, and in his hand is Allison's machete. It's flecked in crimson. Can't find Allison. His voice is stuttering, moving too fast for his lips. She's gone. I tell him to slow down. My head is in rough shape, and it's difficult to follow what he's saying. Bernard, I ask, is there blood on that machete? He shakes his head. He tells me to go back to the tent, to lie down. He says he'll keep looking for her. He says she has to be around here somewhere. She has to. As he stalks off, I think I hear him mumble a prayer, but I'm so very tired. My dreams are once more of Allison, of Darian. This time, they're beckoning me to return to the ruin. They're weeping that Bernard has done this to us, that he's lost his mind. They're saying that he's trying to kill us off so that the discovery can be his, and his alone. He pushed me into the hole, Darian whimpers. He drowned me on the beach, Allison cries. He's drugging you, they say in unison. Don't trust him. Don't follow him. Go back to the ruins and you'll see the truth. Do it before he cuts you into little pieces and eats you, burns your skull and splits it in three. I open my eyes, and Bernard is fast asleep. The machete is tucked securely in his arms. As quietly as I can, I leave the tent and make for the ruins. It's partway through the jungle that the footsteps sound behind me. They're pounding the dirt, moving through the brush like a hurricane. Is it Bernard? I can't tell. My head is aching and my body is exhausted. But despite it all, I press forward at a sprint. I press forward toward the valley below, toward the ruins. I hear laughter in the jungle, manic, maddening, laughter. It's following me, closing in. Whatever is happening on this island, I realize begins and ends with those ruins. I must reach them. It's a small relief to see the rope still anchored to the stone. I quickly toss Darian's line into the entrance of the cavern and squeeze myself through the opening. My palms burn, splitting open in warm blood as they halt my descent. Before I can make it to the bottom, something snaps from above and my rope gives way. I fall a short and painful distance, with the rest of my rope tumbling down around me. Looking up, I expect to see Bernard
Kelihatannya
standing
gitu
at the
sih,
small moonlit entrance.
psikological.
Instead, it's just the empty sky. Bernard! I shout. There's no response. Flicking on my headlamp, I take a look around the cavern. The light reveals a tight cave structure, one splitting off into 3 separate tunnels. Carved into the walls, just like Darian said, are numerals, dates. What's odd though, what's borderline impossible, is the date the numerals list. October 20th, 1972. It's my birthday. It's everywhere. I'm alone down here. There's no sign of Darian. There's no sign of Bernard. The cavern is empty and feels endless. I've made small attempts to scout the 3 tunnels, but each presents its own share of impassable obstacles, whether growing too tight to traverse, dropping off into abysmal black water, or twisting steeply upward. I've chosen instead to remain beneath the entrance to the ruins. It is my hope I can shout and gain the attention of the rescue team when they arrive. Until then, I take this time to update my journal. I filled the entries of my flight from the tent, of my return to the ruins. I filled in other details as best I can while their memory is still fresh in my mind, because even now I feel my stomach roll with hunger and my mouth thirsty for water. I feel myself slipping. These details may prove important to me at a later date. I just need to hang on and hope that somebody will come. But I'm so thirsty. Perhaps just a sip from the lake, only a taste, just to wet my lips. I am unwell. I feel broken. Aching all over. I'm aching in my mind, and it hurts. So much. It hurts. There are sounds around me, sounds in the cave. I've recorded them to study later, but it is so difficult to think, so difficult to write. Are they talking to me? The sounds are so close. Close. They're surrounding me from every corner of the cavern now, and memories are playing in my head like videos or movies. I don't feel good. I feel really bad. I see my hands pushing Darian into the hole, down into the ruins. Oh God, I see her eyes as she falls, looking at me. I'm sorry. Had to. The radio, it was just so loud, and the rescue team would come so fast that I had to call it off. I had to tell them we were just peachy, and that there was no need to rush because Darian showed up right as rain. Of course I needed to destroy the radio, snapped the faceplate on my knee. I had to. What if Allison called them back and told them I was fibbing? Allison, always with her machete. She never let the damn thing go. What the f*** was it? Her child? I needed to wait forever for her to step off into the jungle for a potty break, but when she did, I gutted her, because she was gonna ruin it all. I swear, Scout's honor, she knew something was up with me. Bernard, oh Bernie, you knew the journal was trouble. You knew it was no good. You brought us anyway because you wanted answers for the dreams you were having since you read the thing. But don't worry. People are so easy to strangle when they're sleeping. Oh Lord, the voices, the skull, it told me it needed them. It needed us all down here, and we were so close to being part of this beautiful place, but nobody wanted to come, and Darian didn't land on her feet, so now it's just me. It's just me. Soon though, it'll be me and you. That's it. That's the final entry.
Wow.
Note that for Albert's less lucid entries, I attempted to transcribe them as accurately as I could from his writing. The bizarre capitalizations, the sudden misspellings, all of it is authentic to his journal, if that helps at all. Without access to the remains of any of the individuals, it's difficult to say if Albert was simply losing his mind or really did end their lives. The part about him canceling the SOS signal, however, is accurate. Somebody sent out a call indicating that Darian had reunited with the group and was not seriously injured, and that rescue at the time was no longer needed. We arrived 3 days later after their transportation returned to recover them and found their tent cut into pieces, equipment destroyed, and no sign of any members of the expedition. At that point, a search team scoured the island. I was the one who located the cave system, entered it, and recovered Albert Vess's journal and audio recorder, though there was no trace of him, body or otherwise. Here are the audio files I mentioned earlier. One is a sample of the laughter, and the other is a sample of the voice in the cave. In addition, I visually cited the writing on the cavern walls. The weird thing is that it doesn't match up to what was recorded in Mr. Vess's journal. The numerals I saw were all different. The date they listed was not October 20th, 1972, but instead, April 4th, 1991, my birthday.
Oh, nice. Oke. Jadi ceritanya ini kayak ada yang apa ya? Mentalnya itu diganggu gitu ya. Jadi akhirnya so it's like someone that controlling the mind of someone gitu. Or something controlling the mind of this party team, and he's the one who kill all of his party. Jadi dia yang sebenarnya membunuh semua teman-temannya gitu ya. Looping horror ritual. Iya. Heeh. Looks like seperti kayak gitu ya. Jadi kayak something yang bisa kayak model kayak Eldritch horror gitu. Jadi dia kayak brainwashing salah satu dari mereka sampai nggak punya kesadaran yang bagus untuk gimana ya, Eldritch horror yang ya memang brainjacker sih ya ngomongnya, karena tadi kan ada symptoms-nya ya, ada gejalanya ketika dia mau tidur, flu apa, meriang, kayak tadi dia mengatakan badannya berat, itu kayak kayak sudah kena brainjacker lah, model kayak gitu sih, kurang lebih. Oke, we jump into the next story, but I think the next story will be gonna be the last. Yeah, gonna be the last. Okay, the abandoned blockbuster. Let's go.
If you grew up during the 90s, it's pretty much guaranteed that you spent a significant time browsing the shelves at Blockbuster. It was the ultimate method of watching movies comfortably at home. All you had to do was just drive over to one of their thousands of locations, pick out a couple of movies and some snacks, and head home with a bag full of VHS tapes for a night of movies. But with the rise of the internet and the dozens of streaming services that arose in the last decade, it's no wonder that Blockbuster inevitably closed their doors, fading into the non-stopping tides of time itself. This often happens when big franchises close down. Blockbuster left behind several buildings, not bothering to properly close them down. Instead, some of the shops were just abandoned, turning them into ideal places for urban explorers like myself. Researching and visiting old abandoned buildings was one of my favorite pastimes as I grew up. And though I wasn't particularly brave, I frequently visited locked-down places, accompanied only by my best friend, Eric. Together, we visited abandoned asylums, hospitals, malls.
Okay, best friend ya guys. His best friend. Okay, his best friend. Pelangi-pelangi, alangkah indahmu. Apakah begitu? Jangan mengalihkan horor dengan sesuatu yang tidak sepatutnya ya guys ya. Oke, lanjut.
Houses, you name it. And though it had always been exciting and scary, we'd never been in any true danger. That was until last year, when we decided to visit a recently discovered Blockbuster, situated in the middle of nowhere. The peculiar location actually made strategic sense when thinking about business. We lived in a small town where the vast majority of the population traveled to a bigger city, all using the same highway to get to and from work. So on the way home, plenty of people stopped by the Blockbuster to find their entertainment for the evening. Sadly, the place was rendered obsolete, and due to road construction, the place had been pushed back away from civilization. It was perfect. We planned the adventure for a Saturday evening. A lot of these places, though seemingly abandoned, had security guards and cameras, which could leave us with hefty fines if we ignored the keep out signs. But as we arrived just before midnight, we knew for sure that no one had set foot in there in years. There were no fences blocking the building off, no lights, no power lines, no cameras. It was dead, just a building with a half-decaying sign reading, Blockbuster. Told you it would be awesome, Eric said gleefully as we approached the place. He'd already scouted it out, but he hadn't set foot inside. That was a privilege he had saved for a time we could do it together. He had a knack for finding these places, as if he had some sort of sixth sense allowing him to sniff abandoned buildings out. The door was locked, but being mostly rotten and covered in glass, we could practically crawl through one of the holes to get inside. A rush of adrenaline surged through my body as I took my first step inside. The feeling of visiting a forgotten place so full of history is mesmerizing. That mixed with a feeling of heavy nostalgia for my own childhood made me almost emotional. Holy shit, I heard Eric call out as he walked ahead of me. What is it? I asked, but as I placed myself beside him, I immediately realized what had excited him so much. There were rows upon rows of shelves, and each and every one of them was stocked to the brink with old VHS tapes. The place hadn't been just abandoned, but everything inside had been left behind as well. In the back there were more shelves filled with snacks that had all expired years ago. And though everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, the items seemed weirdly well preserved. I went from shelf to shelf, studying the movies, but it wasn't until I brushed the dust away before a disappointing realization hit me, that all the covers were blank. Of course, it could have been washed away by time, meaning the original pictures were just faded, but it didn't feel right. I took some of the VHS tapes out from their respective boxes to look for titles. This is weird, I said out loud. What is? Eric asked. I showed him the tape. Instead of a printed title displaying the name of the movie, all it had was a letter and a number, crudely handwritten onto the spine of the tape. D1024, it read. Should we check it out? Eric asked. How? There must be an old VHS player laying around here somewhere. I mean, they left everything else behind, right? He explained. Well, even if we found one, they cut power ages ago. Yeah, but we'll take it home with us. It's not like they'll miss it. So we went on a search for a VHS player. Though the Blockbuster had clearly closed down before streaming services took over, most of the shelves were marked with signs reading DVD player, but they were empty. My theory was that they'd taken the DVDs and modern products with them as they closed down, leaving the outdated equipment behind. Found one! I heard Eric yell from somewhere behind the counter. He'd found a door leading into one of the offices, which had a table, a television, and a VHS player already connected. The cables were all zip-tied along their paths, making it hard to remove without a knife or scissors. You didn't bring anything sharp? I asked. No, but maybe a lighter would work. Just be careful not to melt the cable, I said. Don't worry, I got the... Before Eric could finish that sentence, a loud static buzz filled the room alongside a bright light emerging from the television. We stumbled back in shock, staring at the TV in disbelief. Despite the power being cut off, it had seemingly come to life all on its own. What did you do? I asked. Nothing, it just turned on. How was that even possible? As the adrenaline wore off, I tried to more logically assess the situation.
So the TV is turned on just like that. Okay. It's kinda funny because sometimes we just get turned on by some things that we also doesn't know. Just joking, guys. Just joking. Come on, let's continue the movie.
The various light switches, in addition to attempting to turn on anything in the vicinity, but apart from the player, nothing would come to life. It's probably connected to a separate circuit or something. I don't know. I know nothing about these things, Eric said. It's weird. Kind of creepy. Still, now that we have a functioning player, should we check out some of the tapes? He asked. A part of me just wanted to turn around and leave the building. My lizard brain was on high alert, but logically, there couldn't be anything dangerous about an old TV. So I ignored my gut instinct and handed Eric one of the tapes. Here we go, he said, still excited. The static image faded ever so slightly, partially getting replaced by a blurry image. We were expecting some kind of logo, followed by a movie, but instead the silhouette just lingered there in the middle of the screen. We stared at it for a few moments, trying to figure out just what we were looking at. Is that a man? I asked. I think so, but he's just standing there, Eric said. No, look at his head, I said as I pointed out the mild rocking movement. He seemed to be shaking his head, each movement a tiny snap, too fast and jerky for any real human to reproduce, almost as if each move was breaking his neck. Then a picture appeared on screen. It only stayed there for a split second, immediately reverting back to the staticky man. Did you see that? Eric asked. Yeah, it's a picture of a room, I think. You saw it too? Sort of. I mean, I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but it somehow felt familiar. Then another picture flashed on my screen. Isn't that... I began. It's my bedroom, Eric said in shock. That time it lingered half a second, giving us a clear view. By the next time the screen flashed, we even noticed Eric himself sitting on the bed, getting ready for our trip. It was filmed this morning. But the film didn't end there. The image turned back to static, with the barely visible man hidden among the snow. He seemed to be just a bit closer then, still jerking his head in unnatural ways. Let's just leave, I suggest. No, I need to see this, Eric said, still in shock. Then another scene appeared on the screen, an empty road we both instantly recognized. It was the old turnoff that led to this place. A car came into view, with Eric driving it. The footage was taken from the street, as if someone had filmed it personally with shaky hands. But the area was rid of any plant life, completely flat. Had a person been standing there, we'd easily have seen them. Then a second of static with the man standing even closer, before the tape showed a view from inside the Blockbuster looking out. We could see Eric park his car and look over the area as he waited for me. Oh, fuck, he's here, Eric said. We let the tape keep playing as we looked around the room. Once we ensured the building was empty, we retreated to the office and shut the door. The film we were met with froze us both in place. It was the two of us standing in the office, watching the tape real time, and the footage was taken from directly behind us. We spun around in fear, and I let out a relieved sigh when I realized there was nothing there. But as I turned to Eric, I noticed the look of utter horror plastered upon his face. He was staring straight ahead, as if transfixed by something. "What's wrong?" I asked. Don't let him get me," he let out meekly. "Who?" But Eric never got a chance to respond as he suddenly threw his arms up in a defensive pose. Only a split second later, I could see large gashes appear on his forearms before his flesh was torn from bone. He fell to the ground and screamed in agony as more and more of his muscle, fat, and skin got stripped away. I stood frozen by his side, not able to see the invisible attacker. Then I did something I will regret to the day I die. I started to run. I opened the door, giving a final glimpse behind me to see the truth of what was happening. That would be the only time I got a glimpse of the monster, as a picture on the TV screen, a grotesque, massive creature hunched over, slashing at Eric with overly long arms looking more akin to knives than actual limbs. Even had I tried, there was nothing I could do to help him. I ran out from the store, got in my car, and drove away as I called the police. But being distracted by the phone and adrenaline pumping through my veins, I swerved off the road and crashed into a ditch. As the airbag emerged and hit me in the face, the world just turned black around me. It wouldn't be until I heard the sirens. Then I awoke from my slumber. As the paramedics pulled me out of the car, I kept repeating Eric's name, telling them to help him. The police went to check out the location, but all they could find was an old, abandoned Blockbuster with broken shelves, rid of all merchandise. The office was little more than a dust-covered room with a plain table and nothing more. The tapes, the VHS player, it was all gone. Even Eric's body was missing, leaving no trace of his existence behind. I spent some time in a psychiatric institution after that. Eric was listed as missing, and I was put on the list of suspects for a while. But due to the lack of evidence, I was quickly cleared. No one believes what happened that day, but I saw it, and I saw hundreds of other tapes. Eric was just the first of many victims, with the rest just waiting to find their tapes. Maybe mine is hidden somewhere inside as well.
Okay, that's kinda good ghost story ya. Yang terakhir ini, cerita keempat terlihat seperti eh quite a good story. Jadi ghost story yang benar-benar lumayan bagus ya di terakhir ini. Jadi kayak model The Ring gitu ya. Tahu kalian pernah nonton Rings gak? The Ring itu yang ada hantu cewek yang keluar dari TV itu. Itu kan juga VHS tape juga ya. Model kayak gitu juga. Keren sih. Jadi membawakannya itu kayak VHS tape-nya itu cuman bisa dilihat satu orang. Monsternya cuma bisa dilihat satu orang yang benar-benar diincar dan sebagainya. Ini keren banget sih. Yang terakhir ini keren banget. Okay, so that's all for today, I think, guys. We move here. Nah, kita ke sini dulu. Ada apa? Something wrong with my chat? What's wrong? Ada apa ini? Oh, tadi berarti sempat merah ya? Jadi sempat merah berarti. Oke, nggak apa-apa. So, ini sudah hijau lagi berarti. Oke, so that's all for today, guys. Narator dan voice actornya bagus, iya, benar. Narator dan voice actornya bagus. Setuju aku. Oke, so I think that's all for today, guys. Halloween-nya masih belum selesai ya. Jadi sebenarnya aku pengen stream lagi, entah tengah malam nanti atau besok. Kalau kalian yang sudah tahu, kan sudah ada yang pernah nonton ini nggak sih? Sudah nonton filmnya Five Nights at Freddy's belum? Ntar ini aku refresh dulu deh. Chatboxnya kok. Nah, oke. Chatboxnya kok begitu. Jadi teman-teman, Aku rasanya pingin ngajak kalian nonton bareng ya. Ngajak kalian nonton bareng filmnya Five Nights at Freddy's ya. Mungkin entar malam, malam banget tapi atau sekalian besok besok sore gitu ya. Besok Rebu ya? Besok Rebu ya? Iya, besok Rebu. Jadi kemungkinan nanti malam sekitar jam setengah 12 atau jam 12 malam, mungkin aku stream lagi. Aku pengen nonton bareng Five Nights at Freddy's the movie. Itu bagus banget. Cuman kemungkinan cobain narrating juga Cyber. Iya, aku sudah pernah narrating by the way. Jadi kalau kalian cek yang ini, ada satu videoku yang bacain cerita. Itu aku sudah pernah. Cuman next aku juga bakal buat kayak gitu lagi. Eh, Tinggal lanjutin yang itu sih sebenarnya, atau memulai dari awal lagi dari buku baru juga bisa, nggak apa-apa. Ya, jadi gitu teman-teman. Aduh, ini kok picking. Oke, jadi kemungkinan nanti malam, semakin lebih malam lagi ya, bagi teman-teman yang masih mau Halloweenan atau belum bisa tidur. Bentar, lagi merah, lagi merah. Jadi buat teman-teman yang belum bisa tidur, ada kemungkinan aku pengen nonton bareng bareng filmnya Five Nights at Freddy's. Aku sudah nonton sebenarnya, jujur aku sudah nonton. Cuman eh jadi buat teman-teman yang sudah pernah nonton FNAF juga, Five Nights at Freddy's, ini lore-nya bagus banget. Dari pembawaan lore-nya, dari macam-macam lah, dari semua hal yang ada di FNAF itu dibawa ke movie. Nggak di show, nggak di show. Pastinya nggak di show. Pasti aku kena take down kalau di show ya. Kemungkinan nonton di Discord bareng-bareng. Jadi nanti link Discordnya aku tag di eh mana? Di mana sih namanya? Di chat ya, Discordku, ya channel Discordku. Nanti kita bisa nonton bareng-bareng dari situ. Ada kemungkinan. Ya, jadi kalau untuk harusnya Pak Kos sudah ada di Discordku ya, jadi nggak usah anu lagi. Jadi gitu. Jadi nanti malam buat teman-teman yang pingin nonton, rasanya sekitar jam 12-an lah ya. Jam 12-an, jam setengah 12, jam 12-an kita nonton bareng Five Nights at Freddy's. Harusnya gitu ya. Supaya Halloween-nya lebih kerasa gitu. Seriously, Five Nights at Freddy's yang kali ini yang in the movie itu tidak akan ada jump scare karena aku sudah nonton sedikit aja ngomong, tidak akan ada jump scare, tapi filmnya bagus banget. Seriously, filmnya bagus banget. Sebagai film thriller keren abis. Gitu aja sih. Oke, so that's all for today guys. That's all for today. Gitu aja buat hari ini. Terima kasih buat semua yang sudah datang. Tadi ada Miho yang masih ngechat terakhir kali. Terima kasih sudah datang. Ada Faith, ada Elisa Hemlock jadi sudah datang. Thank you. Jovo, thank you for coming also. Terus Pak Kos, Chat Spark, terima kasih juga sudah datang. Thank you banget buat hari ini kita berhalloween ria gitu ya dengan nonton horror animated. Nanti malam sekitar jam mungkin paling cepat setengah 12 atau paling lambat jam 12 aku akan live lagi, kita nonton bareng di Discord Five Nights at Freddy's the movie ya. Five Nights at Freddy's the movie. Oke, sudah aku download, jadi tinggal kita nonton bareng-bareng ya nanti malam. Jangan sampai kelewatan. Buat teman-teman yang belum bisa tidur, jangan lupa nonton bareng. Oke, that's all for today. Thank you so much for everyone who already come. Thank you so much for everyone who already come. Thank you so much for everyone who already joined the Halloween horror animation. If we can meet again tonight around 11:30 p.m. or 12 p.m. tonight, GMT +7, we're gonna meet again and we watch together Five Nights at Freddy's the movie. It's gonna be a cool movie we're gonna watch together. That's all for today. Thank you so much everyone for coming. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for live chat. If you like this video, don't forget to like, Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And we meet again tonight. And like always, keep extreme, stay excellent. I'm Xyber, your Demon Butler.